Yeah, I'm losing my
Rise and fall of gold, Pete. It's a story as old as time here.
I was going to say, this sounds biblical. I like it.
This is like, yeah, like something like Leo Tolstoy wrote, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever read any of those books? They're too long, right?
I read a lot of Cliff Notes.
He did Anna Karenina, right? I think that's the one he did. And did he do War and Peace?
Yeah, wasn't that his big book? I thought was War and Peace.
Yeah, and then there's the other, I think there's the other Russian guy. Is it Dostoevsky? He also did long books. I don't know. Those Russians, they love long stories. We're going to keep this story very short for you. The rise and fall of gold. Not going to mince words because I am not an artist like those old dead men. But yeah, small metals, Pete, fallen from grace on the backs of gold and silver. Gold, especially a big descent from its highs that we saw in August here, Pete. And the story is a rise and fall. And we're looking at SPRE here, which packages a small exchange futures product that packages gold and silver together. And you see this run up from the news of the pandemic outbreak here in mid-March all the way through August. New highs in this product here, all-time highs in gold futures at this time. And now you're seeing a little bit of that collapse, right? No market runs up into perpetuity. And I want to give a little bit more context here because we saw metals, gold and silver, just hanging around lower levels, Pete, for years.
2019 was a tough year to trade metals, 2019. Yeah,
absolutely. And it almost seemed like, with cryptocurrency coming to the forefront, a lot of other markets, Pete, marijuana stocks and everybody wrote gold off, right? Like it was almost like this is uninteresting. Everybody's moving money out of this asset class and into other asset classes like crypto and everything else. And especially here in the end of 18 and start of 19, like you noted, a tough year for metals, tough to trade them without a bias, tough year to make a case for being long them. But you do see this rise to all-time highs in golds, not seen in the history of gold futures going back 3 decades plus here. But now we're seeing a little bit of that fall. And it's an interesting one because SPRE and metals, Pete, have fallen concurrent with SM75's rise to all-time highs. SM75 is a stock market, and we don't usually see this trade of stocks and metals together, Pete, but we did see it for all of 2020 up until about a month ago. You see the fall, metals and stocks here in March. The rise to all-time highs here throughout August, September, and October. And then this last month, a big break.
Right. And you know what? I think it's interesting that stocks and metals were a very interesting pairs trade. And it'll be interesting to see, Frankie, through the end of the year and the beginning of next. Metals and the dollar were also an interesting pairs trade. I think we've seen some extremes. We've actually traded some metals against the dollar with some success, but this is on the way up here. You can see that this was not a divergence pairs trade that gave you a lot of opportunity. And this is probably, going back past, I kind of take that February, March piece off just because it was its own kind of certainly unique event, but interesting to see the breakdown here. This is, for me, I look at that as, we're starting to see a little bit clearer dichotomy on some of these pieces that set themselves up for pairs trades that hopefully are pairs trades that we can go back to. We're getting to the extremes that become very interesting.
Sure. Yeah. And it's interesting, especially because you talk about going back to before, March of this year, and you see a lot of red. This is the correlation between stocks and metals. And you see a lot of inverse trading, a lot of red correlations, them trading against each other. But by and large, since March of this year, green correlations, and actually just this last week, the first time that this correlation has broken red on the year for the first time since like you noted earlier here in 2020. So you see the breakdown in prices here just diverging straight up, new highs in stocks as we speak, as metals are just trying to bounce off of their lows going back to the summertime. You see the correlation breakdown, and it just begs the question now, with the rise and fall of gold, the rise and fall of small metals futures, SPRE here, are you more confident in gold's recovery via SPRE longs, that this market that's been as low as $60, $50 just this year, that it's going to bounce off of $70 and not descend to those lows? Or what I think is maybe a more intriguing trade, and of course you can just trade that rise and fall of gold and keep the story simple, right? One character there, metals. But what I think is maybe a little bit more intriguing is this market that's seeing a correlation breakdown, seeing a breakdown in this price divergence here that's been hanging tough since March of this year. Now new highs in stocks, not so much in metals. I'm more confident in the long SPRE, short SM75, as opposed to just the mere long SPRE, long metals trade.